Riley Jenkins and his wife, Naomi, moved to Maplewood Haven with the hope of finding a quiet life in a suburban neighborhood. Riley worked remotely as a cybersecurity consultant, while Naomi's official job description was listed simply as logistics specialist with the U.S. Army. Though only a few close friends knew the truth, she was an active member of Delta Force. Her work was hush-hush, her missions clandestine, and her skill set lethal. The two had spent years juggling her high-risk, high-secrecy career and his more conventional role in the tech industry. Settling down in Maplewood Haven was their first attempt at embracing a calmer domestic life. From the outside, Maplewood Haven offered an idyllic suburban charm, well-maintained lawns, tree-lined sidewalks, friendly neighbors who organized weekend barbecues and holiday festivities. But, as the couple soon discovered, the pristine veneer belied tensions simmering beneath. One name kept surfacing in hushed tones at neighborhood gatherings: Amanda Bartlett, though everyone had come to nickname her Karen. She was in her mid-50s, with short, styled hair and a penchant for pastel cardigans and crisp slacks. Although not the HOA president, she was by far the most vocal member, always brandishing a clipboard of violations and reminders. Her entire identity seemed entwined with her role in the Homeowners Association. Naomi and Riley first encountered Karen during a casual walk around the neighborhood one breezy May afternoon. Karen stood at the edge of a newly constructed home, scolding a young family that had left a small bicycle on the lawn. She wagged her finger, pronouncing it a safety hazard and threatening an official complaint. Riley and Naomi exchanged wary glances, choosing not to intervene in the argument. It was, however, a portent of what was to come. A few weeks after they moved in, a newsletter arrived in their mailbox, detailing all of Maplewood Haven's events and regulations. Naomi raised an eyebrow at some of the hyper-specific rules, everything from approved paint colors to restrictions on how long holiday lights could remain up. Still, it was standard HOA micromanagement, something they could live with, provided no one crossed the line into harassment. Yet that line would be crossed sooner than they ever anticipated. And the person at the forefront, orchestrating drama from the shadows, was none other than Karen. It began small, as these things often do. One crisp morning, Riley was trimming the hedges while Naomi slipped out for a quick run. Their next-door neighbor, Mrs. Carter, was out watering her rose bushes when Karen stormed over, brandishing her ever-present clipboard. "There's a rule about consistent hedge height, you know," Karen announced, rapping her pen on the wood fence. "If yours is more than 3 inches higher or lower than the official standard, it's a violation. We take curb appeals seriously in Maplewood Haven." Riley paused mid-trim, trying to maintain politeness. "I checked the HOA guidelines," he replied. "It said hedges should be maintained and neatly trimmed, which is what I'm doing." Karen shook her head, lips pursed. "I have the updated guidelines. Perhaps you have an outdated copy." She pulled out a typed page covered in an obnoxious array of bullet points. "It clearly states that hedges must be maintained at an exact height, no less than 4 feet and no more than 4.5. I'll let it slide this time, but you're on notice." "Sure," Riley said, not wanting a confrontation. "I'll check it again." Karen gave him a final glare, then pivoted on her heel, stalking away. Mrs. Carter, watering can in hand, shot Riley a look of sympathy. "Don't let her get under your skin. She's taken it upon herself to interpret every HOA guideline in the strictest sense. Sometimes she's right, often she's not." Riley exhaled. "Thanks for the heads up," he muttered. He resumed trimming, though the simple act now felt laden with tension. Later, when Naomi returned from her run, he described the encounter. Naomi, sweat still glistening on her brow, merely shrugged. "We can handle it. Just keep our stuff squared away, and there's nothing she can do." If only it were that simple. Over the next month, they heard secondhand stories of Karen's meddling. She confronted Mr. Liu about the color of his porch swing, demanded the Petersons take down a tacky Halloween wreath, and even tried to impose a quiet hours rule that extended to entire weekends, an attempt to curtail family get-togethers. Each time someone pushed back, Karen brandished new official notices that nobody else on the HOA board seemed to recall approving. The board's president, a genial older gentleman named Howard Graham, often tried to smooth things over. He'd call special meetings where he'd remind everyone of the actual, legally ratified bylaws, gently hinting that anything beyond those was just unofficial suggestion. Yet Karen would sit in the corner with arms folded, foot tapping, eyes rolling, as though the entire board meeting was beneath her. For Naomi and Riley, the frustration hit home when they received a letter demanding they remove a tasteful garden statue of a small stone lion from their front yard. It was an unobtrusive piece that Naomi's grandmother had gifted them, barely a foot tall, placed near the walkway. The letter claimed the statue violated aesthetic uniformity. But a quick look around the neighborhood revealed dozens of similar decorative ornaments in other yards: gnomes, flamingos, even a frog fountain. Riley attended the next HOA meeting to get clarification. Karen dominated the discussion, flipping through reams of paperwork, citing obscure clauses that might never have been officially adopted. He realized that pushing back publicly might put a target on their backs, but he also felt it necessary to stand up for reason. So he calmly asked about the statue. Could we see the specific bylaw about statuary? Plenty of neighbors have lawn ornaments. Karen gave him a thin-lipped smile. Yes. Well, some items are grandfathered in. Others aren't. We're just trying to maintain a consistent look. Howard Graham looked genuinely confused. Actually, I don't recall any new statue restrictions. Our main guidelines are about fence heights, paint colors, and yard upkeep. No mention of decorative statues outside of that. Karen sniffed. Maybe you've overlooked the new updates. I'll provide them to you after the meeting. After that, the meeting seemed to revolve around Karen's self-asserted new updates, which no one else remembered discussing or voting on. Riley realized she was, in effect, creating her own personal rulebook to lord over people. Howard promised to look into it, but the tension in the room made clear that many residents were already cowed by Karen's antics, or simply sick of fighting. At home, Naomi sighed. This is ridiculous. She's power-tripping over yard decor. Riley agreed, but tried to keep a sense of humor. She's the apex predator of suburban HOAs. In the back of his mind, though, an uneasy feeling simmered. Someone that obsessed with control might escalate if they felt challenged. Naomi rarely spoke of her actual profession. Even among neighbors, she described herself vaguely as working in military logistics, with occasional trips for trainings at distant bases. She had the clearance, the training, and the discipline to maintain a low profile. But secrets have a way of piquing curiosity. And Karen's curiosity flared the moment she noticed that Naomi sometimes left the house before dawn, returning days later with a stoic aura and an imposing, athletic build that suggested far more than a simple desk job. Karen began asking prying questions. Which branch are you in, dear? Are you sure it's just logistics? Your yard is so perfectly kept. Must be that military discipline, right? Naomi answered as vaguely as possible, offering clipped smiles and minimal details. Karen, unsatisfied, turned to gossip. Soon, certain neighbors whispered that Naomi might be part of some specialized unit. Others speculated she was a private contractor. Misinformation mingled with truth, inevitably landing in Karen's orbit, fueling her mania for control. One evening, while Riley and Naomi were out for groceries, Karen approached their neighbor Marta, a friendly teacher who lived across the street. You know anything about Naomi Jenkins? Karen pressed, voice low. I've heard rumors she's not just Army. Something more secretive. That's the kind of thing that could affect our neighborhood's insurance policies if it brings risk. Marta shook her head, flabbergasted. I have no idea. She's always been kind. Why does it matter? Karen scowled. We have a right to know who's living among us. If there are weapons or suspicious behaviors, the HOA must be informed. Marta tried to laugh it off. I'm sure it's fine. She's a professional soldier, for goodness sake. Probably the safest neighbor we could ask for. Karen didn't look convinced. She stormed away, a fresh wave of paranoia in her wake. When Marta relayed the incident to Riley, he gritted his teeth. This is going to get worse before it gets better, isn't it? Naomi squeezed his hand gently. We'll handle it. But let's stay vigilant. They had no idea how soon staying vigilant would become a life-or-death matter. All illusions of a calm suburban life evaporated the day Karen announced her latest initiative, an HOA police team. It started innocuously, an email blast to the neighborhood with subject line, Neighborhood Watch 2.0, HOA Police Initiative. The body of the email read, Dear neighbors, in light of rising concerns about security, Our HOA will be forming a volunteer safety patrol, provisionally called the HOA Police. Though not affiliated with the local police department, we will be trained to respond to potential violations of HOA rules and suspicious behavior. Our mission: to keep Maplewood Haven safe and beautiful. Karen, Amanda Bartlett, Neighborhood Security Liaison. Most residents rolled their eyes or deleted the email, but a few, intrigued by the promise of authority, volunteered. Over the next week, Karen recruited 3 individuals, 2 middle-aged men named Travis and Derek, and a younger woman named Leanne. Together, they started walking the neighborhood in identical polo shirts emblazoned with HOA Police in bold letters. At first, their patrols were fairly tame. They'd stroll around with clipboards, making note of overgrown lawns or improperly parked cars. However, their presence alone unsettled many. Karen started issuing citations for minor infractions, referencing non-existent rules. The Real HOA board was furious, but Karen insisted she was acting under subsection authority they had somehow overlooked. It was all nonsense, but she was loud, persistent, and some neighbors, fearing conflict, went along with it. Riley and Naomi tried to ignore the new volunteer force. However, the day Travis and Derek knocked on their door, announcing they needed access to their garage for an impromptu safety inspection, it became impossible to stay uninvolved. Absolutely not, Riley said, standing on the doorstep, arms folded. You have no legal right to enter my garage. Derek, a burly man with a forced scowl, huffed. It's for the protection of the community. We've had complaints about chemicals and materials that might be stored incorrectly. Riley raised an eyebrow. Complaints from whom? That's confidential, Derek snapped. Naomi, who'd been listening from around the corner, stepped into view. She was still in her workout clothes, black yoga pants and a sleeveless top, but her muscular build and the confidence in her stance made Travis and Derek step back a bit. You two are not law enforcement, she said calmly, voice clipped. This is private property. If you have a legitimate concern, bring a real official or a warrant. Travis cleared his throat. We have the authority of the HOA too. You do not, Naomi countered. I suggest you leave now. Fumbling over themselves, the pair retreated. Riley exhaled, exchanging a knowing look with Naomi. Karen's HOA Police was trying to test boundaries, but they hadn't realized Naomi Jenkins was not someone whose boundaries could be tested lightly. Karen's reaction to Naomi's refusal was swift. She distributed urgent community watch bulletins, casting suspicion on an undisclosed occupant who may store military-grade weapons on the premises without explicit HOA approval. Though she never named Naomi outright, it was obvious who the insinuations targeted. Across Maplewood Haven, gossip flared. Some neighbors were supportive of Naomi and Riley, rolling their eyes at Karen's theatrics. Others, however, whispered that if Naomi was truly military special ops, perhaps that meant the neighborhood was at risk. Could her presence attract criminals or terrorists? The seeds of doubt spread fast, and Karen watered them at every turn. During this time, Naomi quietly documented everything. She saved the bulletins, recorded suspicious knocks or phone calls, and meticulously kept track of any citation left on their door. If things escalated, she wanted evidence. Riley, too, set up extra home security cameras, partly because he specialized in cybersecurity, partly because he knew that intimidation sometimes escalates into vandalism or worse. As the tension rose, Howard Graham, the official HOA president, publicly denounced the HOA Police. He posted a statement on the Maplewood Haven community website. We do not endorse any group operating under the name HOA Police. This is not a sanctioned HOA program. If you are approached by individuals claiming such authority, you have the right to refuse entry to your property and call the actual police if you feel threatened. Karen, of course, replied with her own statement, claiming Howard was out of touch, that crime is on the rise, and that her group was filling in the gaps. The result was a fracture in the community. Some believed Karen's alarmist rhetoric, others sided with the official HOA. Either way, tensions crackled in the air like static before a storm. Late one evening, well past midnight, Naomi heard a noise outside. She had an incredibly light sleeper's instinct, a side effect of her specialized training. Sliding out of bed without waking Riley, she peered through a crack in the blinds. Under the faint glow of a street lamp, she saw a silhouette skulking near their mailbox. Quietly, she slipped on a hoodie and sneakers, opened the back door, and moved around the side of the house like a shadow. With practiced silence, she crept up on the figure, who was rummaging in the Jenkins mailbox, slipping something inside. The figure was tall and wore a dark hoodie pulled over his face. Naomi cleared her throat. "Late for a mail run, aren't you?" Startled, the figure jumped back. Naomi caught a glimpse of the face. A man, maybe in his 30s, not anyone she recognized. He clutched a slip of paper and a small envelope, then sprinted away before she could catch him. She considered giving chase, but decided it might be too risky alone. She had no idea if he was armed, and her training told her not to escalate without good intel. Instead, she went to the mailbox. Inside was a small envelope addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Jenkins, with no return address. She glanced around, seeing no one else, then carefully opened it. A single piece of paper inside read, "You're being watched. Comply with the HOA police or face the consequences." No signature, no official header, just an ominous threat. Naomi's jaw tightened. It was the sort of intimidation tactic that might work on someone who wasn't used to living in a world of real danger. But to Naomi, it just confirmed that Karen and her cronies were pushing further into illegal harassment territory. She slipped the note into a Ziploc bag to preserve any fingerprints. Then she returned inside. Riley woke when she entered their bedroom, and she showed him the note. He looked at her, alarmed. "This is crossing the line." Naomi nodded grimly. "We're dealing with amateurs playing at being enforcers. But amateurs can still be dangerous if they're desperate. I'll notify the local police tomorrow. Meanwhile, let's stay on guard." For the next 2 hours, Naomi lay awake, scanning the dark shapes outside their window, mindful of every rustle and shadow, her soldier's instincts on high alert. Unknown to Naomi and Riley, Karen's HOA police was fast becoming more than just clipboards and matching polo shirts. Karen had begun recruiting a small circle of like-minded busybodies in the area, people who craved authority or excitement, who felt overshadowed in their daily lives and were enticed by the idea of playing cop. She even convinced a local security firm dropout, Kyle, to provide tactical training sessions in her garage. In truth, Kyle's credentials were questionable at best. He'd been fired from a private security gig for reckless behavior. But to Karen, that just meant he had real-world experience. Using her self-printed IDs and homemade rulebooks, Karen began telling her recruits they had quasi-legal authority under Maplewood Haven's covenants. She wove a grand narrative of a threat lurking in their midst, someone with possible illegal weapons, Naomi, someone who might bring violence to their peaceful neighborhood, again, Naomi. The more she repeated these claims, the more certain members of her group believed her. Over the course of several clandestine meetups, they planned a so-called enforcement action. The goal: confront Naomi and Riley Jenkins about violations, demand entry to inspect for weapons, and if necessary, neutralize any threat to the community. Karen's fervor escalated to the point of advocating a citizen's arrest if the Jenkins refused. While some of the volunteers balked at the idea, this sounded extremely illegal. Karen insisted they had the moral high ground. She promised them she had high-level approval, a lie that no one could substantiate. Kyle, the self-appointed tactical instructor, was all too eager to brandish a sidearm, preaching about how forceful presence would ensure compliance. He prepared cheap vinyl vests labeled HOA Police and distributed them to Travis, Derek, and Leanne. The group had no official authority and was teetering on the edge of vigilante behavior. But fueled by Karen's conviction and their own thirst for a twisted brand of power, they pressed onward. Riley and Naomi had filed a police report about the threatening note, but without a clear suspect or strong evidence linking it to Karen, the authorities couldn't do much beyond increasing patrols in the area. They advised the couple to install more cameras and call immediately if they felt threatened again. Meanwhile, Karen orchestrated an online smear campaign on the community's private social media group, painting Naomi as uncooperative, secretive, and possibly stockpiling assault weapons. She posted pictures of the Jenkins home, taken from public sidewalks, and circled suspicious items in the yard: a locked shed, a reinforced door on the side of the house, actually the entrance to Riley's home office, which was kept secure because of his cybersecurity projects. Some neighbors defended Naomi and Riley in the comment section, calling Karen's posts fear-mongering. Others were swayed by the sensational claims. And in the middle of it all, Howard Graham and the legitimate HOA board tried to quell the uproar by issuing a second official statement. We do not endorse, support, or approve any patrol or inspection of any private property. We urge residents to respect each other's boundaries. Karen dismissed the board as toothless. She posted a final update to her group. We must take real action to protect Maplewood Haven. The Jenkins pose a threat, and we have to handle this ourselves. At the Jenkins residence, Naomi sensed the tension building like a gathering storm cloud. Every morning, she ran her usual miles through the neighborhood, scanning for unfamiliar vehicles or watchers. Every evening, she and Riley double-checked locks, tested cameras, and discussed potential next steps. Naomi considered contacting her superior officers, but she hesitated. This was a civilian matter, and she was supposed to keep her Delta Force identity under wraps. She resolved that if real danger came, she had the training to respond without involving her chain of command. What she didn't anticipate was how brazen Karen's group would become, and how quickly. It happened on a Saturday morning. Riley was in the backyard, fiddling with a small charcoal grill, while Naomi was inside making lemonade. The sun shone brightly. The sky was a perfect spring blue, an incongruously cheerful backdrop for what was about to unfold. A knock sounded at the front door, loud and insistent. Naomi glanced at Riley through the kitchen window and motioned that she'd answer it. As she opened the door, her eyes locked on a group of 5 individuals on her porch. Karen stood front and center, dressed in a black polo shirt with HOA Police emblazoned in white letters. Flanking her were Travis, Derek, Leanne, and Kyle, the latter with a conspicuous bulge under his jacket that Naomi instantly recognized as a concealed firearm. Karen cleared her throat. Good morning, Naomi. We're here on official HOA police business. We need immediate access to your home to inspect for contraband. Naomi kept her face neutral. You're not law enforcement, Karen. We've been through this. There's no HOA police. You have no legal right to enter. Karen's expression hardened. She nodded to Kyle, who stepped forward, brandishing a folded piece of paper. We have an affidavit, he announced, voice trembling with an odd mix of excitement and nerves. Signed by Ms. Bartlett, authorizing a search for illegal weaponry. You can't refuse. Naomi calmly took the paper from him, scanning it. As expected, it was nothing more than a nonsensical statement on faux HOA letterhead, with Karen's signature scribbled at the bottom. It mentioned security concerns and unapproved firearms, referencing no real legal statutes, no court. Completely worthless in the eyes of actual law. This is not a warrant, Naomi said quietly, handing it back. Now, please leave my property. Karen's eyes flashed with fury. You're hiding something, she accused. We have the right. No, the duty, to protect our neighborhood. Behind her, Travis, Derek, and Leanne shifted anxiously. It was Kyle who spoke next, stepping even closer to Naomi. We're going inside. Move aside, ma'am. His hand rested on the firearm beneath his jacket. Naomi's heart pounded, but her face betrayed none of it. Her Delta training taught her to remain calm in the face of imminent threat. She raised her voice slightly. Riley, can you come here? Riley emerged from around the side of the house, wiping charcoal dust from his hands. He took one look at the group, at Kyle's posture, and froze. What's going on? He asked, forcing calm into his tone. They're trying to force their way in, Naomi answered. With a fake affidavit. Karen lifted her chin. We have authority. If you don't cooperate, we will use necessary force. Riley exhaled. We're calling the police. At this, Kyle pulled out his gun, a cheap-looking 9mm pistol. He aimed it at Riley's chest with trembling hands. No, you're not, he snarled. Naomi's eyes flickered to the gun. She had disarmed men with far more advanced weapons in far more dangerous situations. But she had to be careful. One mistake could cost Riley his life. Time seemed to slow as her training kicked in, analyzing Kyle's stance, the tension in his trigger finger, the best angle to close the distance. Karen seized the moment to spit out her demands. You will let us inside. We'll conduct a thorough inspection, and if everything is in order, we'll leave. Naomi took a slow step forward, hands slightly raised in a conciliatory gesture. Kyle, right? You don't want to do this. Put the gun down. This will end badly for you. A bead of sweat rolled down Kyle's temple. Shut up. I'm not bluffing. She recognized his posture, an amateur stance. Finger on the trigger, arms stiff, eyes flicking nervously between Naomi and Riley. She had maybe a second or two before his panic might cause an accidental discharge. Naomi moved quickly, crossing the space in a blur. Her left hand struck the underside of Kyle's wrist, forcing the gun upward, while her right hand gripped his forearm. A sharp twist disarmed him. In one fluid motion, she snapped the gun's slide back, ejecting the chambered round, and kicked the firearm behind her. Kyle's eyes went wide with shock. Before he could fight back, Naomi's elbow caught him under the chin, sending him sprawling onto the porch. The entire confrontation took less than 3 seconds. Chaos erupted. Karen screamed, Leon shrieked, Travis and Derek both stumbled back, hands up in surrender. Naomi placed a knee on Kyle's chest, pinning him. Her voice was steady. Riley, call 911. Riley fumbled for his phone. Derek, apparently having second thoughts, rushed to help Kyle, but Naomi shot him a glare so lethal he froze. Don't, she warned. Karen's face was a mix of terror and rage. You attacked him, she shrilled. Naomi kept Kyle pinned. He drew a gun on us, Karen. This is self-defense. From the corner of Naomi's eye, she saw neighbors peeking through windows or stepping onto their porches, drawn by the commotion. Some were already calling the police, while others just gaped in disbelief. Karen, realizing the spectacle, tried to save face. This is an HOA matter, she shouted at the onlookers. We have everything under control. But it was clear to everyone that no legitimate authority was at play here. Only a group of misguided vigilantes who had just stepped way over the line. Riley, still shaken, completed the 911 call. Within minutes, distant sirens pierced the suburban calm, growing louder. Naomi disarmed Kyle further by removing any spare magazines or rounds he might carry, then stood up, stepping away as the wailing sirens converged on the cul-de-sac. You monster, Karen spat at Naomi. You probably. Naomi met her gaze, calm as steel. I'm active duty, Karen, and I take self-defense seriously. You brought an armed mob to my porch. Before Karen could retort, multiple police cruisers screeched to a halt in front of the Jenkins property. Uniformed officers poured out, weapons drawn, shouting orders for everyone to get down. Naomi and Riley complied instantly, hands visible, kneeling on the lawn. Travis, Derek, and Leon dropped to their knees in fear. Karen tried to protest, but an officer barked, on the ground, and she finally complied, tears of indignation staining her cheeks. Kyle lay moaning on the porch, one hand on his bruised jaw, the other reaching feebly for the gun that was now out of his reach. An officer swiftly kicked the weapon aside and cuffed him. The chaos of the next few minutes was a blur of commands, handcuffs, frantic explanations, and at last, neighbor after neighbor stepping forward to describe what they had witnessed. An armed man pointing a gun at the Jenkins, Naomi disarming him in seconds, and the rest of the so-called HOA police looking on. Once the immediate threat was neutralized, the police began sorting out who was who. Naomi and Riley were separated and questioned individually. Naomi calmly explained her actions. Yes, I disarmed him. He pointed the gun at my husband. I felt my life and my husband's life were threatened. I have military training. I only used the force necessary to remove the threat. The officers took note, verifying Naomi's statements with the multiple eyewitnesses who had seen Kyle brandish the weapon first. Meanwhile, Karen shouted at the police that she was protecting the neighborhood, that Naomi was stockpiling illegal guns, and that this was just a small misunderstanding. The cops eyed her skeptically. The entire scenario screamed vigilantism. Within the hour, Kyle was placed under arrest for assault with a deadly weapon, brandishing a firearm, and trespassing. Travis, Derek, and Leanne were detained for questioning, though it seemed likely they'd face charges of conspiracy to commit trespass or intimidation. They looked pale, stammering that they never intended for a gun to be drawn. They pinned blame on Karen for telling us we had the right to do this. Karen tried to remain defiant, until the police found a stash of her homemade HOA police badges, fake affidavits, and documents in the trunk of Travis's car. That, combined with the statements from everyone present, made it clear she had orchestrated the entire thing. She was arrested on the spot for multiple charges: criminal trespass, conspiracy, incitement, and more. As officers led her away, she yelled back at Naomi, "You're the real criminal here. You'll pay for this." Naomi watched with an expression of tempered relief. She knew the legal wheels would grind on, but at least for now, the immediate threat was over. News of the fiasco spread like wildfire through Maplewood Haven. Social media lit up with posts condemning Karen and her so-called HOA police for escalating tensions to the point of drawing a firearm on a neighbor's porch. Many residents expressed horror that one of their own had nearly been shot. Others condemned Karen's group for dragging the HOA's reputation through the mud. Howard Graham, the actual HOA president, issued a scathing statement. "We unequivocally denounce the unauthorized vigilante actions taken by Amanda Bartlett and her associates. They do not and have never represented Maplewood Haven's Homeowners Association. We are cooperating fully with local law enforcement to ensure accountability and to restore a sense of safety to our community." A few staunch Karen supporters tried to defend her online, claiming she had good intentions, but the gravity of pulling a gun on neighbors was too much for the community to accept. Even those who once agreed with her stance on strict rule enforcement found themselves disgusted. Local news crews arrived, interviewing residents who described the growing tension over the past months. Naomi, as discreet as she was, refused on-camera interviews. She let Riley speak briefly, emphasizing that they just wanted a peaceful life in Maplewood Haven and never expected to be confronted by armed individuals claiming HOA authority. The fiasco made the community reevaluate many things, chief among them how one person's obsession with control could spiral into outright criminal behavior if unchecked. It also led many to reflect on how they responded to Karen's earlier intimidation. Some felt guilty for not speaking out sooner. For Naomi and Riley, the immediate sense of danger had passed, but they knew the legal aftermath would be complicated. While Karen sat in jail awaiting her bail hearing, detectives combed through her house and computer records, uncovering just how extensive her meddling went. She had forged documents to appear like official HOA mandates, circulated them to unsuspecting neighbors, and even tried to apply for a private security license for her group, which had been denied by the state weeks before. Investigators found long email threads where Karen bragged about taking down the Jenkins, calling Naomi a dangerous fanatic. There were references to planting evidence if needed, though none had actually been planted yet. The plan, it seemed, was to provoke Naomi into looking like an aggressor so Karen could justify a citizen's arrest. That plan failed spectacularly when Naomi disarmed Kyle in front of half the neighborhood, revealing who the real aggressors were. The police also discovered that Karen had been funneling HOA funds into a private bank account to finance her HOA police gear, vests, badges, printing costs for the fake affidavits, even a taser. Though she was not the HOA treasurer, she had manipulated some board members into handing her access to discretionary funds under the guise of security improvements. This mountain of incriminating evidence made Karen's legal outlook grim. She faced not only assault-related charges but also fraud, embezzlement, and possibly more, depending on how the prosecution proceeded. In the days following the confrontation, multiple local reporters tried to pry into Naomi's military status. Word spread that she had disarmed an armed assailant in seconds. Was she just an incredibly fit soldier, or something more specialized? Some neighbors pointed to Naomi's minimal online presence and her frequent trainings. A few speculated about elite forces, and rumors soared from Navy SEAL to CIA operative. Naomi deftly avoided confirming or denying any specifics, but the curiosity wouldn't go away. Eventually, an intrepid reporter found a partial reference to Naomi's credentials in a Department of Defense Public Relations snippet about advanced training courses. They wrote an article hinting at a Maplewood Haven resident with rumored ties to special operations. While it didn't outright name Delta Force, it stoked the rumor further. One morning, as Naomi headed out for a run, she was approached by a local news camera crew on the sidewalk. The reporter asked, "Is it true you serve in a highly specialized unit of the U.S. Army? Would you like to comment on how that helped you disarm the assailant?" Naomi forced a polite smile and kept running, ignoring the question. But for many neighbors, that non-denial was enough. The hush-hush theories were essentially confirmed in their eyes. Some were in awe, grateful to have such a capable person living among them. Others were mildly intimidated, unsure how to interact with someone who might have been on top-secret missions overseas. Riley, sensing Naomi's discomfort, tried to shield her from prying neighbors and media. "Let them talk," he said. "We know your real mission is to stay anonymous, and soon this story will die down." Naomi nodded, though she worried about how her chain of command might react if the speculation got too loud. Still, given the circumstances, she had done what she had to do. Karen's bail was set high, and it took her nearly a week to post bond. Upon her release, she showed no remorse. She continued to insist she was the victim of a witch hunt, painting Naomi as a secret soldier gone rogue. Her statements only dug her deeper into a hole, as they were contradictory and often blatantly untrue. The preliminary hearings for Karen, Kyle, Travis, Derek, and Leanne attracted significant local attention. Kyle pled guilty almost immediately to brandishing a firearm and assault, hoping for a reduced sentence. Travis, Derek, and Leanne struck plea deals, confessing that Karen had manipulated them and that they never intended to harm anyone. Each gave statements about the false sense of authority Karen had drilled into them. Karen, however, refused to back down. She attempted to represent herself at first, claiming no attorney could understand the righteousness of her cause. Eventually, when faced with complex legal realities, she begrudgingly accepted a public defender. Even then, she tried to sabotage her own defense, insisting she had the right to do what she did because HOA laws are higher than state law, a claim that only showcased her complete misunderstanding of the legal system. During testimony, Naomi calmly recounted the incident. She described how Kyle pointed a gun at her husband, how she disarmed him, how Karen stood by encouraging it all. Naomi never once mentioned her Delta Force status, only stating she had Army training. Her composure and clear, concise testimony made a strong impression on the judge and jury. Karen's attempts to portray Naomi as a violent extremist fell flat, especially since no illegal weapons were found on the Jenkins property, just the normal firearms one might own legally, plus one locked trunk that Naomi kept for her official Army equipment, for which she had all required documentation and permissions. Meanwhile, the prosecution methodically presented the fake documents Karen had concocted, the stolen HOA funds, and the threats she'd made against the Jenkins. By the end of the trial, Karen's fate was sealed. The jury found her guilty on multiple counts: assault conspiracy, fraud, embezzlement, and criminal trespass. The judge, stern-faced, declared that Karen had abused her position in the community, incited violence, and misled vulnerable volunteers. Sentencing would follow in a few weeks, but there was no doubt it would be severe. With Karen awaiting sentencing, Maplewood Haven began a slow process of healing. The legitimate HOA board worked overtime to restore trust, clarifying official guidelines and reassuring everyone that no HOA police would ever exist. They initiated new checks and balances for financial oversight to prevent another embezzlement scandal. Howard Graham oversaw the repeal of any rules Karen had tried to enforce without proper procedures, so that neighbors could confidently display garden statues, choose reasonable fence heights, and host holiday events without fear of receiving a bogus citation. Some neighbors approached Naomi and Riley with heartfelt apologies for having believed Karen's alarmist rumors. Others organized potlucks and get-togethers to re-establish a sense of unity. Mrs. Carter next door planted new rose bushes and invited them over for tea. Mr. Liu replaced his porch swing with a vibrant new color, deliberately ignoring Karen's old complaints. The entire neighborhood exhaled, relieved that the nightmare was over. Naomi and Riley found themselves receiving a wave of gratitude from neighbors who admitted that Naomi's brave action probably saved Maplewood Haven from further tragedy. If Kyle had felt emboldened to keep brandishing his gun at others, or if Karen had escalated her conspiracies, more people could have been hurt. Naomi always responded humbly, saying she had just done what was necessary to protect her family. Meanwhile, local law enforcement increased their patrol presence in the area, not because of Naomi, but to reassure residents who still felt uneasy after witnessing an armed confrontation on a suburban porch. The result was a calmer, more cooperative atmosphere. People who once might have been swayed by Karen's fear tactics realized how dangerously she'd twisted the notion of community security. The day of Karen's sentencing arrived in a thick hush of anticipation. A small crowd gathered outside the courthouse, residents of Maplewood Haven, reporters, and curious onlookers. Riley and Naomi attended, though they stayed near the back, not wanting to draw attention. They had given their victim impact statements beforehand, describing how Karen's actions endangered their lives and the community. When Karen entered the courtroom, she seemed deflated. Gone was the haughty posture she once exhibited while patrolling the neighborhood. Her lawyer looked grim, having likely prepared her for a harsh outcome. The judge wasted little time. For fraud and embezzlement, Karen was sentenced to several years in state prison. For conspiracy to commit assault and criminal trespass, additional time was added. The judge also ordered restitution for the stolen HOA funds and damages incurred. When all was tallied, Karen faced a lengthy prison term. Moreover, her property, her cherished house in Maplewood Haven, would be subject to forfeiture proceedings to help pay fines and restitution. The judge's tone was severe. You wielded false authority to intimidate and manipulate your neighbors. You endangered lives with your reckless insistence on vigilante action. This court will not tolerate such behavior. As bailiffs led Karen away, she glanced over the spectators, eyes brimming with resentment and fear. She spotted Naomi and Riley and glared, but Naomi merely looked on, expression unreadable. Riley watched Karen vanish behind a heavy door, feeling a mix of relief and pity. No one wanted their neighbor's life to crumble like that. But Karen had dug her own grave, one bogus citation at a time. In the weeks after Karen's sentencing, Maplewood Haven settled into a new normal. Kyle, Travis, Derek, and Leanne received their own smaller sentences or probation, based on plea deals. They'd have permanent marks on their records, and no one felt sorry for them. The HOA board began reorganizing, electing new members, and focusing on genuine community-building projects. Naomi continued her service, heading off to short-term missions or training exercises, which she masked under the umbrella of Army logistics. Riley, from his home office, maintained a watchful eye on the neighborhood cameras, though the watchfulness was more about ensuring leftover supporters of Karen didn't try anything rash. He doubted it. Everyone had seen just how badly that fiasco ended. The once feared HOA police was now a punchline at neighborhood gatherings. If someone needed to reference an absurd level of rule enforcement, they'd jokingly say, "Better call the HOA police." Everyone would share a knowing laugh. Even the official HOA board quietly updated the bylaws, clarifying that no such group could ever form again under its banner. One sunny afternoon, Howard Graham invited Naomi and Riley to an HOA appreciation event at the local park. The board wanted to publicly acknowledge neighbors who had contributed to the well-being of Maplewood Haven. Naomi, initially hesitant, decided to attend when she realized it was more about celebrating unity than focusing on her. A small crowd applauded politely when Howard thanked the Jenkins family for exemplifying bravery and composure under extraordinary circumstances. Naomi accepted the kind words with humility. After all, she'd faced far graver threats overseas. But she was heartened to see Maplewood Haven forging a sense of harmony out of the chaos Karen had sown. In the quiet aftermath of those turbulent months, life took on a gentler rhythm. The Jenkins rose hedges bloomed a vibrant pink under the sun's warmth. Children rode bikes down the street without fear of scoldings from a clipboard-wielding neighbor. Porch swings, lawn gnomes, and decorative statues coexisted peacefully, each yard reflecting the personal tastes of the homeowners. A subtle testament to the newfound freedom from Karen's oppressive meddling. Naomi woke before dawn most mornings, lacing up her running shoes. As she jogged through the sleeping streets, she felt a sense of calm. Each step reminded her how a tranquil suburban existence could be threatened by the smallest seeds of paranoia, how easy it was for someone like Karen to sow discord in the name of order. Yet it also underscored the resilience of community, and how quickly neighbors could unite once the truth was exposed. Riley, too, found his work less stressful now that he wasn't juggling phone calls to the police or rummaging through bogus HOA violation notices. He occasionally posted in the community forum about cybersecurity tips, earning respectful thanks from neighbors who once might have been too busy defending themselves from Karen's antics. News of Karen's downfall eventually faded from local headlines. She remained a cautionary tale, her house sold at auction to cover court-ordered payments. A new family moved in, an easygoing couple with two energetic dogs. They introduced themselves to Naomi and Riley over the fence, and the Jenkins were relieved to have new neighbors who simply wanted to live in peace. Sometimes, when a breeze rustled through the trees at twilight, Naomi reflected on how close the confrontation had come to tragedy. If she hadn't been trained, if that gun had gone off, Maplewood Haven might have become a national news story about suburban violence. But life moved on, shaped by the lessons gleaned from Karen's misguided quest for control. In the end, Maplewood Haven remained a portrait of suburbia, with the usual quirks and small disputes, but also a renewed sense of camaraderie. The ghost of Karen lingered as a memory of how dangerous it is when someone elevates themselves above the law, and how vital it is for communities to stand against tyranny, no matter how petty or self-appointed it may appear. Naomi and Riley savored the peaceful hours, grateful that, for now, their biggest concern was deciding which new flowers to plant or when to host the next neighborhood cookout. Their quiet, unassuming life was all they'd wanted, and at last, it seemed truly within reach. And if any future Karen dared to rise up, Maplewood Haven now knew just how to respond. With clear eyes, unity, and a firm grasp of what real authority and real community look like.